Hi, I'm Olivia.
And I'm Amy.
And this is a Girls in Marketing podcast. Every week, we release a new episode that you won't want to miss. Our guests are industry experts with amazing experiences, so you'll always come away with new nuggets of wisdom. From educational and inspiring episodes covering the latest in digital marketing to casual and fun chats with the Girls in Marketing team, unpacking marketing myths and trends, we've got it all.
Here at Girls in Marketing, we're all about empowering and supporting women to be the best marketers they can be through our online learning platform and community. Check out our resources and membership to get involved, as we'd love to welcome you to our inner circle.
Right, let's dive into an episode together. Hello and welcome back to the Girls in Marketing podcast. Today we are back with another snack episode and we're going to be talking about B2B influencer marketing. I think this is a really interesting topic. It's definitely on the rise at the moment. It has been for the last, I would say, maybe year, 2 years. It's something that a lot of brands who typically are in that kind of B2B space are now investing in. And it's something that I think a lot of our community are kind of coming to us and saying, we really want to invest in B2B, influencer. Is it worth it? Is it not? So yeah, let's discuss and talk about, do we think that it's effective? Is that something that, we think is effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it is. I've always kind of said this in that, although, you're selling to a business, you're not targeting the brick and mortar of the business. You're targeting the people who work for the business, and they are people at the end of the day, and they are influenced by a whole number of things. And, obviously there are more decision makers that kind of come with the decision making unit about whether businesses purchase certain products or services. So you've potentially got to influence more people, but at the end of the day, they are people, and they have, kind of their own interests and things that kind of you can tap into when you're kind of targeting them and stuff. So I think there are a lot of ways that businesses can really creatively work with influencers. I think that it's definitely something that's on the rise, and businesses are finding it a bit easier to navigate now. I think that the thing is unfortunately B2B marketing generally is always kind of a couple of steps behind B2C, just because, like I mentioned about kind of the decision makers and stuff, it's always a little bit trickier to find how it might work in that particular setting. But I do think there's so much opportunity for it, and just understanding having a really clear idea of what the customer persona within the businesses that you're selling to looks like, really understand that person and what matters to them, what their goals are, what their frustrations are, and then what types of people they might turn to for advice, what types of people they might trust. And once you know that, it's a lot more easy to kind of identify the right influencers that might work for your brand.
So we're talking about it from the point of view of influencer marketing, but actually it's that thought leadership element with those people who have a following, which typically is the word that you would call an influencer, but it's also kind of not as well, because it's very much like these people who are posting and are bringing a following, whether it's founders or even there's lots of different people, you're tapping into that thought leadership. And I would definitely say from a B2B perspective, as you said, Amy, it's so hard to kind of track that customer journey anyway from lots of different settings, but especially when it comes to B2B, because there's so many extra loopholes that you've got to go through. I would definitely say investing in B2B and influencer stuff, maybe come at it more from the angle of like brand awareness, but from a targeted perspective. So targeting a specific audience using a thought leader, because I don't personally think that just going straight from, I want you to post this link, and influencer marketing's moving away from that anyway, but saying to, a thought leader, I want you to post this link and talk about this brand, isn't necessarily going to work. But having that bit of exposure, that kind of brand awareness for a thought leader to talk about a brand, I think can be really beneficial, because you may not be able to see the direct link clicks, for example, but you'll be able to see much more people talking about your brand and kind of having that brand at the forefront of their mind. I think it's just a really interesting one.
Yeah, and I think the brands that kind of understand that, and the brands that kind of are moving away from that link clicks kind of vibe and more towards the brand awareness and the kind of the traction, and not necessarily being really anal about ROI and stuff. It's just a lot more, I feel like the campaigns that get a lot more traction, like you say. And I think it's I quite like the term, I don't know what you guys think about this, but I quite like the term thought leadership, because you could say like influencers in the B2B space or like B2B influencers or whatever, but like I feel like thought leaders really gives the value to them people. Like them people know their audience, them people know what they can say about your brand to their audience and what's going to work for them. And it's giving them the freedom to be able to do that and to not be like really, really strict with the brief and really, really like, I want this.
Yeah.
And just giving them, like, at the end of the day, you know your audience the best, don't you? So it's just giving them the freedom to kind of explore that and kind of, the trust and not being like, I need this many link clicks or I need this many things. Like, it's just giving them the freedom to kind of explore that brief, isn't it?
Exactly. And like I said before, you know, if you're going off link clicks and you're going off things like, you know, direct, you know, sales as a result of somebody talking about your brand, you're likely that that's going to be far less easy to track in the B2B space, because from a B2C perspective, say if you're a brand that sells, you know, I don't know, like cosmetic stuff and you do some influencer stuff on TikTok, you might get a lot of people clicking that link or using that discount code like immediately, because it's the only person who's making that decision or involved in that decision is you. Whereas if you're thinking about working with thought leaders or influencers in the B2B space, you might be influencing people and they might be like, you know, they become aware of your brand, and then it might not be immediately that they then say, they take it to their manager and say, you know, we really need to use this tool or we really need to use this whatever. But the next time that conversation comes up, it might be next quarter, it might be next year, and then it's like, okay, actually, you know, at the time when they first heard about it, they already had a tool that they used for that, so it was just like, you know what, that's not relevant for us now. In a year's time they go, how's this tool working for us? You know, is it still relevant? Do we still like it? Actually, no, let's look at something else. Oh, I know, I remember I heard about this one. So it's such a long game. And so I think that, you know, if brands are kind of thinking of using influencers from the perspective of just kind of going, you know, we need immediate link clicks and we need people to purchase right now, it's not necessarily going to work. You need to be in it for the longer game. And that's why, and I would say this of all influencer kind of brand relationships, working with brands long term is always going to be more impactful. You know, just working with one influencer for 1 month and then another influencer the next month, you're not building trust amongst that particular influencer or thought leader and their audience. It's very obvious that you're just kind of doing a scattergun approach with your influencer marketing, and people really do see through it. So think about it, I think, very much for like the long game, even more so in B2B than in B2C.
Yeah. If we consider the kind of 8 to 20 touch points that you need to have with your audience, think about it from a B2B perspective. If you need to have 8 to 20 with the one original person who sees it, then you also need to potentially have 8 to 20 with the next person, maybe who has the budget, or potentially it could even be higher than that, you know, like a director or another stakeholder. Then you've not only just got those original kind of 8 to 20 touch points that maybe a typical kind of B2C brand would have, you've got like, I mean, I'm not even very good at maths, like 8 times, 3 or 20 times 3, it's a lot more touch points. So it is harder to track. But I think from a brand awareness perspective, you're so right. It's so impactful. Like you can't even describe how interesting it is. I've seen so many people in the space, especially LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is now moving into that kind of like more of a professional platform rather than a platform for just kind of applying for jobs and kind of CVs. We had John from LinkedIn on our podcast. I definitely recommend anyone to go and check that out. It's a really interesting episode. But what he talks about is that LinkedIn used to be there for CVs and applying for jobs and just kind of like, promotions and stuff like that. Whereas now it's very much like it's becoming a creator platform. They even have like a creator program. Like they're doing a lot more things to encourage people on the platform to become thought leaders. So if LinkedIn are going that way, then surely other brands should realise that, LinkedIn are seeing this market, they're tapping into it, which rightly so, because it's a good market, it's a really beneficial one. So kind of tapping into that, but understanding that, the kind of metrics are not going to be the same as a typical influencer campaign, especially if you work for a brand that maybe has done influencer marketing before. Maybe you work for a brand that has got quite a big influencer budget. and they've done kind of B2C stuff and they want to maybe go into more B2B stuff, understanding, okay, well, actually, people are not going to have hundreds, they're not going to have millions of followers on LinkedIn. I mean, there probably is, but there's not that many that have, millions of followers. You're probably going to get like a much smaller, follower count, maybe a lot less engagement than maybe you would from someone who has like 1 million followers, but it's a much more targeted audience.
Yeah.
And I think tapping into that is really exciting, for a lot of brands, especially if maybe you are B2C and you're tapping into B2B, or you want to try and, go down that kind of angle.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think what you just said then is so important. It's like if your audiences really do align, then no matter whether, your engagement's absolutely through the roof or if it's a bit lower, if you're tapping into the right audience, like you're hitting the right people, so it's going to work for you. I think an interesting one, I guess, for people who might be listening who are thinking, okay, yeah, this is all great, but I work in B2B, what specific things can I do? Like maybe what ways can I actually work with influencers? I mean, I've seen loads of really great examples of B2B influencer marketing. I think that, one thing that you can do if maybe you're a product-based business, like a physical product-based business, is work with influencers to maybe, I don't know, you could do like kind of like collaboratively like co-create something, or something that they've had input into, and obviously therefore if their followers trust them and their opinion and you've co-created a product with a brand, then it's kind of like maybe you're going to buy into it a bit more. Or if it's I don't know, whether it's like tech or whatever it might be, you could work with influencers to get them to do kind of like product reviews. Influencer can be a whole number of things. It can be gifting, it can be paid ad stuff, can't it? And maybe get them to like review your products in detail, create detailed product reviews that, from a B2B perspective, if you're trying to pitch to your manager, we need a new XYZ, go and show them this review by this person who's really well respected in the field, and are you going to get much of a better reference than that? I think there's a lot of ways, but I don't know if you guys have got any other thoughts on how you can kind of work with influencers from B2B perspective.
I've been seeing a lot of that unplugged on LinkedIn, which is it's like a space, so it's a physical space, so it's not a product or a service. And I know that they have done a lot of like B2C stuff, but I assume from seeing the LinkedIn stuff that they're doing, they're trying to tap into that like professional kind of setting where it's like, you're really burnt out, you're really stressed and you want to go somewhere, and it's essentially a place where, from my knowledge, obviously this might not be completely correct, you go and it's like in the middle of nowhere. This sounds a bit like creepy horror story vibes, but like it's in the middle of nowhere, and you put your phone, again, this sounds like a horror film, but it sounds really good. You put your phone into a box and like you basically don't use your phone and you go for a few days. Now
they do give you a emergency phone though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did hear that because I was like,
yeah, it does seem a bit like mad, but you do that, and then they've worked with a few different influencers. I know that Isabel Cowell, who's on our podcast, she's done some stuff with them before, and I think they typically work on like a gifted basis. It could also be paid stuff as well, I'm not sure, but that's really interesting because they're a physical space that you may think, oh, they're only really going to tap into like B2C, but they've obviously seen this market that they want to tap into. From maybe they found that when people were coming to their venue, it was a lot of people who were professionals who would come in because they were burnt out, they were tired, and they wanted to kind of get away from like corporate life. They thought, oh well, maybe we want to like tap into this market a bit more, which could be the case for a lot of physical spaces. If you find you work for an actual venue, if you find actually we're getting a lot of professionals coming in, maybe tapping into B2B, B2B influencer is a way to go.
I think it's definitely just kind of seeing the opportunities there, identifying the opportunities, and just trying to get ahead and trying to try as many things out as possible. Because like you say, with Unplugged, I know they work with a lot of businesses, and obviously employee well-being is like a massive thing at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a trend, maybe it's not. Hopefully it's not a trend, because it literally should be like given.
Common practice.
But yeah, I think they've really tapped into that, and it's kind of employee well-being is kind of spoke a lot about on LinkedIn at the moment. So if your brand is kind of anything to do with that, I think that's a massive thing. And it's just identifying the opportunities, isn't it? And getting ahead and being hopefully kind of one of the first people to kind of see that. And
I think kind of a final point on B2B influencer marketing is that in the very same way as B2C influencer marketing, the way that it's going to be most successful is if you allow the influencers or thought leaders that you're working with to really kind of have that creative input in what they're talking about. Let them use their own natural tone of voice. Do not kind of dictate what they do to the point that it just feels out of place to their audience, because it's not going to work. Because it needs to feel authentic.
Even that example, like that kind of obviously breaks the trust with them influencers, but it also I think it just puts a negative spin on your brand as well, because it's just like
you're too controlling, and you're not kind of, you don't have that kind of, you know, visibility and that vision to say, you do what you want, we trust you.
No, 100%.
Yeah, so hopefully that kind of gives listeners a bit of an insight into, you know, B2B, influencer marketing, and it's definitely a rising topic that so many people are going to start tapping
and
into.
There's huge potential there already, and I think even if you start now, like, you're still 100% like ahead of everyone else. So yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Girls in Marketing podcast. We love hearing from you, so if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review to let us know your thoughts, and make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button to be the first to hear when our new episodes released. Don't forget, if you want to get involved with Girls in Marketing, check out our membership to join our incredible community of marketers. Think marketing resources, courses, webinars, and more. Find out more on our website or drop us a message on any of our social channels @Girls in Marketing.